hopefully as the talk goes on, that will become a little bit more clear what I'm talking about, what I mean by it. And the reason that I know that today's talk and the topic is so important for me to do is because as it drew closer and closer, I started to get more and more terrified, and I started to talk myself out of talking about this topic because it's really vulnerable and sensitive for me. It all of a sudden became like, oh no, don't do that. Nobody wants to hear that. So then luckily I heard trust in the difficult. Trust in the difficult. So here I am, grief walker. And one of the things that we're really deeply interested in studying and looking into the heart of in yoga practice is cycles and the cyclical nature of reality and the phases of life cycles, which are birth, and then life, and then death. And they can be literal, taken literally, so birth, or you can look at birth as freshness, new beginnings, creativity coming into beingness, spring, you know, and life as sustenance, maintenance, sustainability, effort, perseverance. And then death can be taken literally, or it can be the ending of things, dissolving of something, letting go. It can be sorrow and darkness, deep winter. And one of the phases, I think in the West, not the coast, but the side of the world, one of the things that I think one of these phases in the West is highly underrepresented and underestimated, and sometimes seen as inferior because it's difficult. And that's death. Death in the literal sense and in the metaphoric sense, in sorrow and grief and in letting go. So what I want to offer today, what I want us to do right now is actually take a moment and see if you can connect with a time or with a person in your life that you've lost. Right? So maybe if it feels appropriate, you can close your eyes. It's just going to be brief. And just take a couple of deep breaths and see if you can bring close to you somebody that you've lost. And for me, every time I've lost someone in my life, particularly if the loss is sudden and tragic, unexpected, in the midst of like the waves of grief and confusion of life's like, holy, what, you know, in the midst of all of that is, for me, this sense of urgency. It's like this urgency towards life. What happens is all of a sudden it becomes like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Am I living my best life? Am I doing all that I can? Does everybody that I love know that I love them? And how can I do that immediately, you know? And so inside of loss and of grief, of death, is for me a sense of real, pure aliveness, of bringing me into the immediacy and the fragility of life. And so, and if any of you were here a couple of weeks ago for Ken's talk, you know, this room was rendered completely raw and in full connection with life itself. And so whenever I've lost or when I'm experiencing loss, physically or on any level metaphorically, I always am wondering, how can I keep that sense of immediacy and aliveness, in a sense, wakefulness? How can I stay awake without tragedy, you know? Like, can I stay awake in the world without needing it to come from, like, the big wake-up calls of life? And, you know, in a lot of mystical traditions, it's considered a really, really high practice to meditate daily on one's own death. And it's not morbid. It's not meant to be morbid. It's not seen as morbid. It's actually meant to keep us in direct contact with the transient nature of things, how quickly things can go away and change, and how important it is then therefore for us to be fully alive and awake. So the vulnerable part about this for me is it's like a coming out for me today. Because all of my life I have felt the world so deeply. Like, I just feel the world, and in particular, I feel the pain of the world so deeply. I can feel, when Buddha says life is suffering, I can feel that. And I know my own pain. I know my own shadow. I know about my own sorrow. Ultimately, I think it has a lot to do with the longing of my soul. I know about the longing of my soul. And when I'm with someone, when I come into contact with someone, I also can feel and see the parts of you that are brokenhearted as well. And I'm not afraid of pain. I'm not afraid of the messiness of life. I'm not afraid of tragedy and despair. In fact, it sort of pulls me closer. It pulls me in. I feel like I have a job there. I feel like I have purpose there. And one of the things I think that's so, there's a couple of things that come along with a life like that. One of them is, I think whenever you go into the heart of something, you want to go to the very core of something, there's a tendency that you can be swallowed by it, right? So if you're going into the center of pain, if you're going into the center of grief and longing, there's a possibility that you will be overcome by and swallowed by that. So I've struggled with depression, you know, I still struggle at times. And I'm thankful that I have a spiritual practice for that reason. And then the other part that comes with living a life that like that is me, is there can be a lot of shame attached to it. For me, I feel like, what a weirdo, right? Like, you're dark and twisty. Like, you're like in pain. It's like that's the thing that pulls you in. Like, how weird is that? And so there's a lot of shame that can come along with that. And there's a lot of like, just change your mind, change your focus, you know, use affirmations, perspective, like, you're so blessed, Natalie, and this life is so short, and you're not hungry, and you're not cold, so like, get it together. What about the children in Sudan, you know? And all of those things are actually true, and they're important. They have a place. They're great tools, and I use them. And there's another piece of the story, which is they can be used at times to deny and distract ourselves from parts of ourselves, critically important parts of who we are, all aspects, you know, a fuller picture. So today, for me, is sort of this, it's a coming out, and it's an active step away from shame and into part of what I feel like is a gift that I have to offer the world and in the people that I work with, right? So that not only am I in full contact with all parts of myself, but then when I'm with someone, I can be present for and hold the whole of who they are. I think that's so big for us as chiropractors. And so I'm just going to leave you quick. I know I'm up with 2 things. I can hear my teacher's voice rings in my head a lot, Saphir's voice. And some of these things have become mantras of mine, and I'll just leave you with 2. And the first is trust in the difficult. And the second one is, I can hear her say this, Natalie, it is our destiny to be victorious. It is our destiny to be victorious. As long as we believe that it is. As long as we're willing to work really, really hard. And as long as we're willing to resurrect, which implies dying first, to resurrect and resurrect